I still remember that morning as if it were yesterday. The sunlight streaming through our bedroom window never looked so cruel, because the man I once trusted with my heart and soul walked into the room with a stack of papers that would shatter everything I thought my life was. I was 6 months pregnant, my hands trembling as I clutched my growing belly, my mind screaming with disbelief as he looked at me with cold eyes and said, "I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce." And for a moment the world stopped. The sound of my own heartbeat loud in my ears, the room spinning around me as tears blurred my vision. I wanted to scream, to beg, to make him stay, but my voice caught in my throat, and I realized that the life I had imagined for myself, the happy marriage, the laughter, the plans for our baby, were all being ripped away in an instant. I thought of all the nights I had lain awake dreaming about holding our child together, about him whispering promises in my ear, and now those dreams felt like a distant, impossible memory. And as he turned and walked away, leaving me alone in that room with the silence pressing down like a weight, I sank to the floor, my hands instinctively covering my belly, feeling the small flutter of life inside me, and amidst the heartbreak and panic, a strange, fierce protective instinct surged, telling me that even if he had abandoned us, I would fight for my baby, I would survive. And yet the nights that followed were a storm of anxiety, shame and confusion calling my family, trying to find someone who could understand, someone who could hold me when the tears wouldn't stop. And every knock on the door, every ring of the phone made my heart jump, half hoping it was him coming back, half knowing he never would. And through the exhaustion and despair, I found myself whispering to my unborn child, promising that we would be okay, that even in the darkest moments, I would be our strength. And though the pain of betrayal and the weight of uncertainty pressed on my chest like an endless storm, I couldn't let it consume us. I couldn't let him take away the hope we still had. And in that first week after he left, I discovered a part of myself I never knew existed, a resilience born out of love and fear. And as I stared at the tiny shoes I had bought in secret, imagining the life we might have had, I realized that this child, our child, would be my reason to stand, my reason to heal, and somehow, even in the middle of heartbreak, I made a promise that nothing, not even the man who had promised forever, could break my will to protect this little life growing inside me. The days turned into weeks, and each one felt like walking through a minefield of memories and regrets. Every familiar corner of our home, a reminder of what I had lost. The clothes we once picked together now just fabric hanging lifeless in the closet. The nursery I had painted with so much hope now echoing with silence. And every time I felt the baby move, a tiny kick reminding me of life and promise, I felt both joy and a piercing loneliness, because the one person I wanted to share this with the most had vanished. And friends tried to comfort me with words that felt hollow, telling me, "You'll be okay." But they couldn't understand the storm raging inside. The nights when I sat on the floor of the empty kitchen, rocking back and forth, feeling the baby stir, and whispering apologies for a life that I hadn't yet given him, but that already felt so fragile. And the society's whispers, subtle glances when I went out, made me shrink inside, ashamed of being abandoned, ashamed of carrying a child alone. And yet in that shame, a stubborn spark ignited, telling me that I wasn't just a victim of betrayal. I was a mother-to-be, and my child deserved love, courage, and protection. So I started to rebuild, seeking counseling, connecting with support groups, talking to women who had faced similar pain. And slowly, the heaviness in my chest began to lift, replaced by determination and self-respect. And I discovered a new strength in standing alone, in speaking my truth, in telling my story to anyone who would listen. Even though every conversation brought tears and ache, I refused to let my husband's choices define the life of my baby or myself. And with each small victory, each moment I felt capable and strong, I imagined holding my child in my arms and whispering the story of resilience, of how we survived, and the idea that love wasn't just about a husband or partner, it was about the life we create, the courage we find in impossible circumstances. And in those lonely nights, I began writing letters to my unborn child, telling him about the strength of his mother, about the world he was coming into, about love and hope and the promise that no matter what happened, we would thrive together. And in this act, I felt a healing, a bond forming between us, a bridge over the devastation that life had handed me. And slowly, piece by piece, I reclaimed my identity, not as a deserted wife, but as a mother, a fighter, a woman who would not break, who would carry life and love through the deepest pain. And as the months passed, every kick, every heartbeat, every moment of shared life between me and my child became a testament to survival, to courage, and to the unbreakable bond that no divorce, no betrayal could ever sever. When the day finally came, labor pains slicing through my body, exhaustion threatening to crush me, I gripped the hospital sheets and closed my eyes, remembering the months of fear, anxiety, and lonely nights, the endless tears, the whispered prayers to a universe that sometimes felt cruel. And as I heard the first cries of my baby, the world shifted, the weight of heartbreak lifting, replaced by a love so intense it made everything else fade. The nurses placed my tiny, fragile child on my chest, and in that moment, all the betrayal, all the pain, all the nights I thought I wouldn't survive, became fuel for a new life. And as I held him, feeling his heartbeat against mine, I realized that my strength had carried us both through the storm. That even in being abandoned, I had found a power I never knew I had. And I looked around the room, imagining my husband's absence as irrelevant, because here was the life that mattered. Here was love in its purest form, untainted by lies or broken promises. And in that quiet, sacred moment, I whispered to him that he would always be protected, always loved, always valued, and that no one in this world could take that from us. And I promised myself that our story would not be one of despair, but of resilience, courage, and hope. A testament that even when life turns cruel, even when the people we trust most fail us, we can rise, we can nurture, we can love unconditionally. And as I left the hospital cradling my newborn, feeling the future stretching out before us, I understood that this child, our life together, was the ultimate triumph over abandonment, over heartbreak, over the cruelty of someone else's choices, and that from this day forward, we would face the world together, unafraid, unbroken, unstoppable. Because even though my husband had walked away, we had each other. And in that bond, I found everything I needed to live, to fight and to love without limits. Everywhere I went, the world seemed to whisper my failure. People's eyes staring like they could see my shame, my solitude, my growing belly that carried both life and pain. And sometimes I felt like disappearing, like crawling into a corner and never coming out. But then I would feel the baby move, a tiny kick reminding me that we were in this together. And suddenly the fear and loneliness became a fuel, a force to keep me standing, walking into offices, navigating the crowded streets, carrying my bag heavier than ever, feeling the curious glances of strangers, pretending I didn't hear the murmurs, pretending I wasn't terrified of what the next day might bring, balancing work and doctor appointments, sometimes falling asleep on the floor because exhaustion and worry weighed me down. And yet in the quiet moments, when I finally closed my eyes, I would whisper promises to my baby, telling him that we would be brave, that I would be his shield. And slowly, a miracle happened. A cousin reached out unexpectedly, offering support. A friend who had once been distant now becoming my shoulder to cry on, helping me prepare the nursery, painting the walls in soft colors, buying tiny clothes, telling me, "You are stronger than you know." And in that kindness, I felt warmth I had not thought possible, realizing that even when people betray you, even when life seems cruel, love and support can appear in the most unexpected ways. And every day brought a mixture of tears and tiny victories, learning to cook for myself, taking walks to calm my mind, laughing at small things, crying at bigger things, and through it all, I kept imagining the day my baby would come, feeling his movements, imagining his face, imagining holding him in my arms. And each night, I would write letters, little notes about our journey, about the strength I had discovered, about how betrayal had almost broken me but had also forced me to rise. And I began speaking openly about my story in online groups, connecting with women who had faced similar pain, finding courage not just in surviving, but in thriving. And as my belly grew rounder, as the days drew closer to meeting my child, I realized that this experience, this storm of heartbreak and societal pressure, had shaped me into someone who could love fiercely, who could fight, who could face judgment with her head held high. And even though there were moments when despair threatened to pull me under, I had discovered an inner strength, a determination so fierce that I knew I could survive anything for the sake of this new life. And in those quiet, stolen moments, when the world seemed harshest, I would press my hands to my belly and whisper, We will be okay, my little one, because together we are unstoppable. And nothing, no one, can take away the love we share. Nothing can break us. Finally, the day arrived, and the pain was like nothing I had ever experienced. Sharp and relentless, yet beneath the fear and exhaustion, there was a strange, fierce excitement, the culmination of months of struggle, months of preparing, months of imagining this tiny life. And as the nurses guided me through each contraction, as the room filled with the sounds of machines and voices, I gripped the sheets and closed my eyes, focusing only on the little life waiting to meet me, imagining the first moment I would see him, the first time I would hold him. And then came that cry, loud and clear, breaking through every fear and shadow that had lingered over me. And when they placed him on my chest, skin to skin, I felt a wave of love so powerful it brought tears streaming down my face. A love that erased the pain, the abandonment, the sleepless nights, and in that instant, I understood something profound. My strength had carried us through. My courage had protected him even before he drew his first breath. And even though the man who promised forever had walked away, it didn't matter because this tiny being, fragile and perfect, was mine to nurture, mine to love, mine to protect. And as I cradled him, feeling the warmth of his body, the rapid beat of his tiny heart, I whispered promises to him, telling him that he would never feel alone, that he would always be loved, that his mother's arms would be a safe place in a world that sometimes feels cruel. And in that room, filled with soft light and new beginnings, I felt an overwhelming gratitude for the journey, for the pain that had forced me to discover a strength I never knew existed, for the nights of tears that had taught me resilience. And even in the midst of exhaustion, I smiled, imagining the future, imagining us walking together, facing life's challenges hand in hand. And I promised myself that I would never let heartbreak define us, that our story would not be one of despair, but one of triumph, of courage, of unbreakable love. And as I left the hospital carrying my child, feeling his tiny fingers curl around mine, I realized that we had survived the storm, that life could be cruel, that people can abandon you, but nothing could take away the bond we shared. And with every step, I felt empowered, knowing that we would face the world together, that we would build our own happiness, and that even though my husband had left, the life that mattered most was right here in my arms, perfect, precious, and infinitely loved. And in that moment, I understood that motherhood had transformed me, had given me a purpose stronger than any heartbreak, stronger than any fear. And as I looked down at my baby's peaceful face, I whispered, "We are unstoppable, my love." And nothing in this world can ever change that, because we are together, and together we can face anything.